Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our town hall called Managing Our Mental Wellness Amongst the Media Mayhem. I am your moderator, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. With 6 days to go up until Election Day, we are being bombarded with messages all over the place, social media. I'm getting text messages from candidates who are running from office. Information overload is everywhere. We have a couple of panelists with us here today to talk about mental wellness during what could be very well considered an overwhelming time for all Americans. So I'll tell you a little bit about our panelists. Greg Vogt's road to recovery began during his time at a mental health center as a teenager, where he had been sent with his mental health when his mental health became life-threatening. There, Greg discovered the power of vulnerability, the importance of real relationships, and the act of admitting faults. While in the treatment center, he realized the opportunity he had to pursue a path of mental wellness. Greg graduated from the University of Arizona in 2017 with a bachelor's degree in marketing and entrepreneurship. During his time as a student, Greg spent nearly 2.5 years writing and publishing a book. A self-help memoir, The Battle Against Yourself, was written with the mission to help students who are struggling to find hope, identity, and fulfillment. Since publishing his story, Greg's mission to help has expanded to college campuses and other groups around the country. In his engaging talks, Greg drives home the importance of prioritizing our mental health, seeking support, and supporting those around us to do the same, and the power of sharing our experiences. In addition to his authorship and work with Greek University, Greg is also a speaker with Active Minds, which is the nation's leading nonprofit organization for mental health awareness and education among young adults. He's also a board member for the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance of California, where he is leading in strategy and communication with the youth community. We also have with us today Cassie Firebaugh. Cassie joins us from Indianapolis, and she is a former NFL cheerleader, go Colts. She's no stranger to the challenges the game of life throws her way. As a busy mom of 6, a business owner, and an entrepreneur, it's safe to say that she definitely has a few balls of her own to keep in the air. However, that very full life came to a screeching halt one evening as she experienced a stroke on her birthday that changed everything. Against the odds, 2 weeks later, she had a second stroke. Cassie has tackled many obstacles, such as living with a heart defect, single motherhood, and multiple business creation and ownership. Today, as her story continues, she is living proof that you can turn pain and fear into power and fuel. Cassie is passionate about using her voice to inspire students to confidently stand up and use their own to speak to be heard. So welcome to our panelists. Welcome to our live audience. Let's start with some statistics. I want to talk about what's happening in our country here today. More than 2/3 of adults in the United States say that the 2020 election is a significant source of stress in their lives, according to new data from the American Psychological Association. And that is a significant increase from 2016, when just 52% of survey respondents said that they found the election to be a source of stress. So now 68% of respondents said the election is bringing them stress. And according to the data, the levels of stress vary based on demographics. So adults who have chronic conditions, for example, are consistently more likely to call the election a source of stress than adults without chronic conditions. And the proportion of Black adults calling the election a source of stress has also jumped significantly. So 46% of surveyed Black Americans said that 2016 was a source of stress, compared to 71% of respondents this year in 2020. So clearly, presidential election anxiety is a real thing. So, Greg, talk to us a little bit about prolonged stressors such as this election season, which seems to me that it's been going on for a long time. So what are the warning signs that people might see in family members, other students on campus, or maybe administrators on campus?
Sure thing. And yeah, I mean, to your point, to echo that, it's been a chaotic year, and election season has loomed for months. There's sort of that anticipation, that eagerness, that curiosity of what's going to happen, and I think that's sort of one of the triggers is the unknown, the what if, and the how long, right? Like it's been months that people have kind of been on the edge of their seat, being kind of pressed with this uncertainty. And so as far as warning signs and in an individual, whether that's, a friend, your family member, somebody on campus, that's really kind of struggling with this particular topic and it kind of allowing it to take a toll on their mental health. Warning signs can look like a change in behavior, whether that's retreating, maybe acting out, maybe, leaning away from friends, or sort of canceling people out, not showing up to things they would normally show up to. There's just a lot that can fit under that ball, but whether that person was a certain way and live in certain ways and sort of transitioned into a visible and notable change of behavior, I think that's certainly one point of thing to note. And in a change of behavior, it's important to talk to that person, ask how you can help, and point them toward next steps and resources, such as counselors or some sort of resource you have in your circle. And then also just kind of the emotional and mental stability as well. That's another warning sign. Do they feel sad all the time, anxious, kind of on edge, maybe angry, frustrated, mad? But if those, it's totally okay to have a bad day or even a bad few days, bad week. But if that feeling or feelings is pretty constant for a long duration of time, that's certainly a big indicator and something that I would recommend you try to help that person out, or if it's you, counsel help on your campus, in your workplace, with a counselor or somebody who is willing to pour into your life and provide good counsel and good advice.
That's perfect. That's great advice. Cassie, talk to us a little bit about what's going on this election cycle. What do you think is stressful to you as you consume social media? I know you're on Facebook, you got Instagram. I know you're talking to all of your friends, you're talking to neighbors, you're talking to your own children. So talk to us about the stress that you're feeling right now.
Okay. Well, I would have to say that I think the better question might be like, what's not stressful? Like, I feel right now that this has almost been, we jokingly like to say, the longest March ever, because it feels like our lives kind of just came to a halt last spring. And I don't know about anyone else, but I feel like mine still kind of feels like in this waiting zone. And, every single day there's something new that I feel is a stressor out there. For me, a lot of it comes down to, are my kids going to stay in school? If they're not, and I have to try to juggle online learning with balancing a career, that was really, really hard. It's hard for a lot of parents that maybe don't have a career, but those that are juggling all of it, all of a sudden you took on this brand new career as a teacher. And my children are not nearly as darling as the teachers have made them out to be. And I've realized that I'm not as patient as some of the teachers that they've had over the course of time. So I definitely am stressed about their well-being, about how to make sure that they are still continuing to get the social development that they need. And I think along those lines too, is allowing them to create their own decisions about what's important especially when it comes down to an election or what they vision a political leader to be. I know our oldest daughter, is her first election to vote in, and we've had a lot of conversations about what it is that she values. And when you have these conversations, especially with teenagers that just became adults, because 18 is, yes, you're legally an adult, but have you lived enough life yet to really understand what taxation means, or social policies that can affect your future and your children's future? I'm not sure if they're maturely thinking about that. They're just worried, hey, is TikTok going to be taken away? That's kind of where they're thinking right now. And it seems sort of superficial. So we're trying to have meaningful conversations about what each candidate stands for. And also let them know that it's okay if you don't align with simply someone on the red or the blue side. You can be in the middle and have this view that, you wish, it could be this way and it's this way, and someone somewhere in the middle is maybe where you fall. And that's okay. Whatever you believe about, your beliefs is okay with us. But it's also difficult with the amount of influence that not only I think as adults we have as our friends and family, but for the youth, especially, they get a preconceived notion about how someone may believe in a certain situation, how they would handle it if they were to vote for either President Trump or Vice President Biden, and they associate a parent's characteristics with that. And I found that, especially for my elementary students, they come home and they have like I like to call it the parent parrot syndrome, where they hear what the other parents are maybe saying, and they're talking in the playground about things that are just way over their head. But at this point, it's becoming personal, and they take the attacks if they say, well, your mom believes this, she's that, or your dad believes that. And so we're trying to balance that, saying, no, you can't make blanket accusations. You can't make a statement that fits everybody, because, likely you'll be a little bit ignorant in that if you guys don't kind of take the time to figure out that a lot of people have views that are somewhat down the middle. And if you take the time to talk to them, you might align a little bit more than you thought in the beginning. So the stress of just managing their expectations, their fears about what they hear could happen or could not happen, the livelihood of their parents, their security, a lot of those things I think float around in their little brains, but they affect them in big ways as well. So we're just trying to manage not having our anxiety taken out too much on the little ones here. As far as friends and family go, again, same thing. I know the certain people that if I'm going to have a conversation, I'm going to have a glass of wine beforehand, or I'm going to take a breath, and we're going to find the right time and place. And I try to eliminate stressful conversations when I'm not in the right state of mind to have them. So
I like that strategy. I think that's a good one. My son actually just came home from school today with an assignment. He's a sophomore in high school. Came home with an assignment today where he has to put together a report to figure out who they would vote for. Obviously, he's too young to vote, but who would you vote for? And then give some research, give me some real data to tell me why you feel that way. And I thought it was great, because I think it is a way to kind of manage some of the stress of what's going on right now by just, instead of listening to all the noise that's happening around them, whether it be their friends or whether it be their parents or whatever, for them to just jump into the research, start reading, and start to form some opinions and make an argument, right? And so I think it's going to be fascinating. I told him I want to be the first person to read it when he's done.
And when he's done, can he post it out there for the rest of the world? So we'd love just to have some facts out there. We just got through the argument in our house whether Christopher Columbus was a villain or a hero. So that's the mindset we were in, going into that. And now it's jumping proverbial ship, I would say. But I think it is important to learn about the facts. And that's the big stress for a lot of peers I know, that they don't know what the facts are, and we're swimming in data and information and messaging, and you don't know what to believe, and no one has, I would say, the time to sit down and go, okay, well, if I'm given this fact, is it a fact? How do I find out that it's real? If that's fake news, then what's not fake news? And so those stresses are definitely front and center, I think, for everybody right now.
Yeah. So Greg, talk to me a little bit about anxiety. Why is anxiety sometimes helpful and sometimes harmful in other scenarios?
I think anxiety is helpful because it inadvertently provides self-awareness, right? When you feel anxious about something, there is versus no feeling at all, right? Like if you were just dull in your feelings or your emotions or your responses, there is less of a bridge to figure out what the root challenge or pressor is. But when you feel on edge, when you feel anxious, when you're pressed emotionally and mentally with something, there is a bridge that happens to what that feeling is, to the condition that's causing it. And so people freak out. People respond often out of fear when anxiety waves, or retreating out and sort of brushing it under the rug. But In fact, I think it's an opportunity to embrace and discover some deeper whys on what's causing that. It's harmful when it's not taken seriously, when it's not viewed as an opportunity to seek help or move forward with, and when it's instead of kind of learning about it and embracing it and acknowledging the anxiety, when it's sort of ignored, brushed under the rug, and put aside. That's when it's harmful, because then you don't give yourself an opportunity to tap into it and to discover. And I think we have to be really intentional about not running away from it, and instead identifying, okay, what is causing this and how can I understand it? And then therefore, how can I move forward in a healthy way and navigating that? So it is harmful in ways, and it is helpful. I think it's just case by case, individual by individual. And same thing goes for this season we're in now with what's going on in society. So, anxiety comes in lots of different forms. It can be permanent for some folks. It can be situational for others. Generalized anxiety, there's disorders as well. So it's just learning about what your personal situation is, and navigating it in a healthy way. And certainly understand that there's courage in acknowledging it, and courage in seeking help and support, not necessarily the guilt or the shame that sort of greater society might portray.
I like that. Now, Cassie, there's a lot of things that are going on right now, and I wonder about this compounding effect of all of these things happening at the same exact time. So we have this pandemic that we're dealing with. We're dealing with the economy, right? So a lot of people are out of work or have lower hours, things like that. We have these weather phenomenons that are happening right now. So there's all kinds of storms that are hitting various parts of the country. Then we have race and inequality conversations that are happening. We just had a death recently in Philadelphia, and now there's additional protests that are happening there. So, I mean, seeing all of this all happening all at the same time, how does that impact our mental health?
No, absolutely, Michael. I think that for me personally, when they announced that the murder hornets were coming, I was like, okay, just take me out. At this point, like, what else? And I don't know that there's probably not one person that hasn't said enough. Enough is enough. Like that. To Greg's point about anxiety, I think that it grows every day because you don't know what's coming next, and the news has become more of a, I don't know. I mean, for ratings like The Bachelor versus like what's actually, supposed to be information given to us. And so, I think that what we're struggling with is, people's livelihoods are being affected, whether or not that's due to the economy taking a hit, the shutdowns, again, kids not being in school. How does that affect the parents' mental wellness as well? There's kids that need to be in school. We've discussed that. And my children are very lucky that they have, a warm, loving environment. And there's some students that need to go to school for that warm, loving environment. And, I feel like across the board, I mean, you could be in a shutdown in a home that's not safe. Or you could lose your home in California to a forest fire. I mean, there's so many things that are happening all the time. And they all feel like they're just, like you said, compounding into one. Mm-hmm. That sends your sense of unrest and anxiety off the charts. I think it's super important to note that in 2017 and 2018, according to a study done by Mental Health America, that the adults that identified with mental illness there was a 19% increase from the year before. And this is before the pandemic even came. So about 1.5 million people identified with a mental illness before COVID even hit. Now they said that about 37% of the adults that were studied, that they've said, yes, I absolutely feel like I identify with depression, sometimes suicide ideation. And what scares me even more, and I think we had a little bit of a discussion about this, is that as an adult with a feeling of situational anxiety, I'm able to have the tools to know that this will pass. And given the right tools, I can find help to get through those situations. What alarms me is for the youth, about half of the 11 to 17-year-old population that were studied in this research, they had a feeling of killing themselves one half to almost every day out of the 2 weeks they took increments of in the study. And I just think how scary that is, that these kids are feeling this isolation, and they don't know who to talk to, and they don't know how to describe it. And if we blow that off as a parent and say, well, of course you're depressed, it's a bad year, or I'm stressed too, I get it. But for a child that doesn't have the tools that we do to understand that at some point life will go back to, whether it's the normal we knew before or something different, life will go on. And unfortunately, personally, we have had a situation with my stepson where his best friend's sister took her life because her dad took her phone. And she said she was going to do it if he did. And, the father said, you're 13 years old. You're not going to do something like that. Like any parent kind of thinks, oh, child's being dramatic. And she did. And I think that's what is fearful for me of our students and the youth that have so much pressure right now. I think about college students trying to get a job outside of this if they're in their senior year, or a freshman going into college and not having the experience that they thought they were going to have after their senior year in high school was just completely disrupted. And after a certain amount of time, how much is too much? So I think that we really need to pay attention to that. We pay attention to COVID numbers all the time going up. But if there's 178 cases of documented depression and suicidal ideation, and I don't know what the latest COVID numbers are, but upwards of 200 and something thousand, those numbers aren't that far off. So what about the people that are living with this now? And how do we take care of them to make sure that that doesn't add to another toll, for society, and especially our kiddos that are our future. So yeah, those are just something to think about. I think that the statistics are staggering of the amount of mental wellness that's there. Abraham, did you have a question? Sorry, raise your hand. Oh, he's.
Yeah, I think he jumped out.
Okay, yeah, no worries. So just the quality of life of the people that are living, and how do we make sure that that they're taken care of as well, and not focusing on the actual COVID virus, but mental wellness and mental illness as a whole, because I think that those lasting effects are going to be far more detrimental as we see this play out over history and in time.
No question that COVID-19 is going to impact this generation significantly, and I wonder, what impact that has when people are losing their lives. When we talk about the mental health issues, there's no question that this generation is going to be impacted. And I don't know what that's going to look like, right? 10, 20 years from now. I don't think anybody knows, but it's certainly going to have an impact. Greg, I'm wondering, what do you think about this? I mean, is it normal to be feeling this way, let's say during an election cycle? Is there any data that shows us what past elections can tell us about anxiety and what we're feeling right now?
I do believe it's normal. This year feels very different, and it is, I would say, in an elevated way. But in reality, if you just dissect what an election is, it's people voting for a couple of different options to lead our country. And one thing that I would say to people is that voting on anything causes divisiveness. It's just a fact. It's just a reality that we can't change, right? Cassie, you have 6 kids, right? You let's just say you say, hey, kids, it's Saturday night. What ice cream shop do you want to go to? Or what place do you want to go to dinner? Or, hey, for the holidays, where do you want to go on vacation? And you ask all 6, you're probably going to get 6 different answers, or maybe at least 4 or 5, right? Ben and Jerry's and Cold Stone and, Yogurtland, whatever it is, right? The same goes for choosing the leader of a country. And because it's such a vital role in people's eyes, and there's a lot of weight that's carried, the emotional aspect gets enhanced. And so I think we just need to step back and look at for what it is. People are voting And that causes divisiveness. Just like if you're picking, get a group together and say, where do you want to go for ice cream, right? So we need to step back and just understand that, just because you vote for X doesn't mean you are defined by that vote as a human being, or because you vote for Y doesn't mean that's who you are. People are putting these blanket statements on, if you vote for this person, then you're X, Y, and Z. And it's just, they're two separate things. You should vote because that's all right, but it's not a definition of your life or your calling or who you were constructed to be. And so I hope we can just lead with a little bit more empathy through this next week and carrying on. But certainly, like in hindsight, or just grand scope of things, absolutely, it's normal to have anxiety in elections because these two candidates are, let's not sugarcoat it, different. They're very, very different. Probably compared to most elections, I think that certainly heightens the weight and the circumstances in people's eyes. Absolutely, rightfully true. But give yourself some grace, because it is an anxious time. There's a lot at stake. And just remember that it's normal for voting to cause, conflict and divisiveness, because if one person chooses X and one person chooses Y, and they believe that X is right and they believe that Y is right, of course there's going to be a but, right? Mm-hmm. So I would hope that we can just step back and understand that as truth, just in many, many decisions, not just the presidential election.
I hope that happens. Cassie, I mean, it seems like this all started back in maybe like 2016. I remember being on Facebook, and, we had this election in 2016 where half the country was going for Trump, half the country was going for Clinton. And it was like, we are starting to unfriend people on Facebook that we don't agree with politically, even though we've known them our whole lives. I mean, we've been friends with them for 20 years, right? And suddenly we're willing to just let that whole friendship go because they don't agree with us politically. So, I mean, what should we be doing right now, Cassie? Should we cut people out on social media that we have different beliefs from? Should we start limiting the time that we engage with people that we don't agree with? Or should we just consume less news? I mean, what should we be doing?
Well, I know there's going to be probably a lot of different holidays out there this year, whether or not some relatives decide to come or not come because of an argument. You never know. But look, I feel like every season of our life, we do have to do a cleansing of people that may or may not be toxic in a lot of ways. I think that's important to do that as you grow. Sometimes your friendships and relationships don't grow with you. It is a good time to say, hey, is this person bringing something positive to me? Is it making me a better person? Do I enjoy being with them? Do I feel, that sense of euphoria that a friendship or relationship should bring outside of all the stress in everyday life? And naturally, I think we go through those cycles. But right now, I think what's happening, Mike, is that we're looking at our lifelong friends or our sorority sisters or fraternity brothers that were in our wedding. And when they say something or they post a meme, whether it's an angry Donald Trump meme or a silly Biden dementia meme, whatever it is, we instantly start to think, well, I don't even know you anymore. I mean, how could you think that way on either side of it? And truly, at the end of the day, you do know them. You do know their heart. November 3rd is going to come and go. Those relationships that you've had for your lifetime, that you've invested everything in, these sometimes are the godmother, godfather to your children. I mean, these are people that are your lifeline. And, unfortunately, I think we're so quick to dismiss people nowadays that when you are anxious or you are reaching out and you need someone to lean on, to Greg's point, you need those relationships. You need someone to be able to talk to. And if you've cut everyone out and cut everyone off because you don't agree with something that they post or something they say publicly, you may win the argument, but you kind of lost. I feel like you lost the big prize at the end of it. That being said, there are some people are triggers, and chances are, if they offended you last year. They're going to offend you next year. And so I think the snooze button on Facebook is a really great tool. I've used it myself a lot, and it just, it eliminates some of those triggers for me personally. And I think that it's safe to do that. I also feel like we are in an oversharing environment where sometimes our coworkers or acquaintances maybe don't need to know everything about how we feel. Will it affect the way that you're viewed at work? Will it affect something else in a situation you don't want, I don't know, it to be put out there? Because once it's out there forever. And I remember when Twitter used to be the one place where people, like the angry people, went and like vented, and then it died and it never went anywhere. Well, now, I mean, anything and everything you say can be brought back up and, maybe used against you in some ways, especially in your career. And I think it's important to put limits on what you do share. I know there are buttons on Facebook and Instagram that allow you to only have a certain audience that can participate. So maybe you bring down your safety circle there that you feel comfortable, chatting with. I think that we just feel like everyone needs to know everything. I'm sure you had a great lunch today, Mike, and Greg. I'm sure that you and your wife watched an awesome movie last night, but does that mean that I need to know every detail? Probably not. I mean, it won't affect whether I like you more or less. And we are so in that information, throwing it out there, which is, it can be a balance that you have to make sure that your boundaries and your sense of security are first and foremost. But I think the one other thing I wanted to say is that as far as being offended, that's really what's causing a lot of the divisiveness, I think, in friendships. Is you think, well, like Greg said, I'm not one thing because I vote this way. I may be fiscally conservative, but socially more accepting and adaptive, and I don't fit in anywhere. I don't know. So we're not all of one thing, just like, you can't identify your whole personality in one little box. But I do think that what ends up happening is that oftentimes we get offended because people are like breaking the rules of what we think they should be doing. And so that offends us. We think, well, this is the way it should be done. So really, you kind of have to take an internal look of like, why is that offending me? Is it because I don't believe that's the way they should be acting? And then it really becomes a personal, like, hey, maybe your way isn't always going to be the right way. Maybe his way is always going to be the right way. And somewhere in the middle, if you have a tough conversation, you may learn something from someone else. So we just forget that with social media, we are the ones in charge of what we see, what we absorb, and we need to put limits on that. We really do need to create boundaries that are healthy for our entire mindset, and how you treat the people that have been there for you and that are going to be there for you, whether or not, Donald Trump or Joe Biden wins, like we're still getting up the next day, putting on our shoes, going to work. And that's what's important, to know that your life is what you make it. And those people in it are probably going to be there long after either one of these candidates will be here. So focusing on all the importance of that is super important to me.
Yeah, that's some great tips, some great technology ideas that you can use. And I agree. I think, we have to kind of own social media in the sense that we need to control it and kind of limit when we need to, right, for our own care. I think that's super important. So, Greg, along those lines, let's talk about self-care routines. What are some things that our audience can do to improve our mental health right now?
Sure thing. I mean, there's so many different options, and the first thing I would go with is just find what you like, find what works for you, and find what helps reduce your stress, your anxiety, and just where you feel like you're in a good state of mind. Like for me, it's when I'm writing, or it's when I'm shooting hoops, playing basketball at a local park, or I'm running, or I am in a social setting with friends, whatever that looks like. Those are kind of like my bread and butter. Those are my go-tos. But for other people, man, it could be playing the guitar. It could be, watching Netflix. It could be just whatever it is. There's so many like fitness apps, meditation apps, like whatever kind of floats your boat. So I think the one thing I would just recommend is find what helps your state of mind and commit to it consistently. Even I have challenges with that. It's like, I'll go play basketball on a Tuesday and then I won't go play again for 2 weeks, and so, or more. And so I think it's just about consistency and being deliberate about taking care of yourself.
Yeah, I think that's great. For me, every morning I'm up, I'm at the gym first thing before I start my day, and it just completely clears my head, allows me to focus. So that's really important. Going to talk to a therapist, I think, is also super important. So just talking to somebody about everything that you're feeling, I think it's just, it takes all this weight off of me when I just let it go and just talk to somebody else about it. And I feel like it's off of me somehow, and it makes me feel better. So that definitely helps. And those meditation apps, man, I tell you what, some of them are just really, really phenomenal. So if you haven't done any of those meditation apps, go and pick one up and try it out for a week or two. And I'm telling you, you're going to feel better. It's unbelievable how it works.
Headspace and Calm are two really common ones.
Yeah, those are really good.
I fall asleep too. Like I always, Matthew McConaughey has one, and it's just it's like velvet, and like I'll just go to bed, and it's like, and Gerald even says, like, "Are you falling asleep to Matthew again?" I'm like, "I sure am," and I sure am. I used to fall asleep to things like podcasts like Dateline, and that just never put me in a great state for the next day. So I agree with you. Those meditation apps are super important. And Mike, kudos to you for having the consistency that you do, because I'm like Greg. I will start something. I'm like, tomorrow I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to bed tonight. I'm going to get off my phone. I'm not going to be on it. No screen. And then I'm getting up. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to work out. And then tomorrow I'm going to get up. It's just, so yeah, I think having consistency and routine is so important.
Yeah. If I get off the routine, then I'm like Greg, it'll be like 2 or 3 weeks before I'm back on it. So I know that I have to stay on it, because if I don't, it's gone for 2 or 3 weeks, and I don't want that to happen. So I guess it's that, being scared of what's going to happen if I stop.
Really, really good self-accountability. That is awesome.
Yeah, I try the best that I can. So, Cassie, what's the best way to have a meaningful conversation with somebody who you might disagree with politically? I mean, obviously, this is going to happen, and I think this is going to happen more so probably within the next week or two. So how do we navigate this?
That's a great question. And I think you're right. Within the next week, things are going to get extra heated. And I think with both you fellas, I use the analogy, it's almost like the biggest rivalry between two football teams. And I think back to my IU days when we'd have the Purdue and the bucket and all the stuff that I was like, what is this? But it was so tense. And, at the end of the day, someone would pout and walk off the field, and then it'd happen all over again. This time is different. I feel like there's so much, unfortunately, there's been a lot of unrest and violence, sometimes associated with really, really deep-rooted views. And we've seen that happen, some of the rioting or peaceful protests that have gotten out of control. And so you always have to wonder, how did we get to that spot? I mean, what triggered someone to get that angry to get to these places like Portland, or to, what kind of situation could we have avoided so that this was, a conversation instead of, something more violent? I think that a couple things is super important when you are having conversations with people that you respect. Is that considering the time and place when you do them. I don't think that having a tough conversation in the middle of a workday around the water cooler, so to speak, is healthy for everybody in that environment, because 9 times out of 10, there may be 4 people that agree and 6 people that don't, and you just don't know. And I feel like that you have to go there every day, especially in a workplace where you're in an office setting or school, and you're around these people every single day. You might want to pick a time and place that's more, private, or say, hey, you know what, I respect you enough to have this conversation about some tough stuff. I'd love to hear your opinion. Do you think we could grab coffee? Or if it's a heated post and I am the biggest offender of just, like, oh, and then I delete and then I write it back. And so it's just having that sense of like, all right, do I need to get on the Calm app? Do I need to be on Headspace right now before I go into an attack? because those words are forever. And a lot of times I've been super surprised that the amount of attacks that strangers have upon strangers, and like Greg had said, blanket statements and wide generalizations. And I find myself doing it sometimes, and I think, gosh, Cassie, is that bringing out the best part of you? Are you being the most positive version of yourself? And if that's not, then get off of it. Then, just know who you can have a conversation with and who you can't. Do you really care about their opinion? Because for me, Nancy on next door might have an opinion, but I don't know Nancy. And does it really affect me? And if it affects me tomorrow and it affects the way I treat my children or my husband or spouse, because I'm carrying a little bit of anger, resentment from not getting the last word in on, again, like, a Facebook post that, at the end of the day, those people's feelings are going to be the ones that matter the most, not the stranger that I attacked or I thought that I won it in. I think we think about the comebacks so much more, instead of like when you're having a conversation that is respectful, allowing them to say what it is they feel. And and instead of thinking about, well, what's my comeback? Or I had this study, and I see it online all the time. Someone will put a study and then the other person puts a study and I go back to the whole like fact checking stuff. Who even knows what someone's throwing out there? And it's like, but did you read this? Did you read that? It's like, yeah, you know what? I could read 6 different things and they could say 6 different things. So let's not think about what to come back with, instead of just listening and absorbing, because maybe we'll learn something. And you know what? I guess the last point of reference I'd say is just know when it's worth it, and when you're not going to change somebody's mind if they really believe one way. I feel like we're more trying to change someone's perspective in an argument, especially around a heated election year. I don't think that's going to happen. And knowing that boundary of saying, okay, you know what, it's okay that they believe that way. I'm going to go and I'm going to exercise my right to vote. Like Greg said, it's super important. And that's the biggest, statement you can make. And it's private. You don't owe that to anybody else. And just choose wisely who you have conversations with, because your emotional energy is so important. And when it's ill spent on the wrong situation or topic, then it sucks kind of like the energy out of your positive tunnel and into a negative one. And we don't want to do that. This world doesn't need it.
Those are good tips. I like that a lot. One thing that I think about often on college campuses, in just our culture in general, is this thought of empathy. It's something that I think we need to have a little bit more of. So I'm wondering, Greg, what potential benefits are there in having conversations with those who might have opposing views?
Yeah, I think it's very simple. You're going to walk away with more knowledge than you entered in, right? It's just by default, you're going to learn. You're going to learn about their pain points, their priorities, their struggles, their confidence levels, and why they're making the decisions they're making, why their choice is one way versus another. And that equips you with more knowledge and understanding, and, to your point, empathy. We have to be willing to place ourselves in their court, right? Just for a little bit, just to understand. We have to be willing to put ourselves in their shoes. And no matter who it is, no matter, even if we think we won't like them or think we won't have a common denominator or whatever, and just having the willingness to be open-minded, to just listen, and being a question asker rather than a statement teller, right? Yeah, we have to just ask questions and not demonize people for choosing one little itty bitty way differently than us. Like voting, yes, it's a big deal, but when you think of, if you evaluate one person, right? Like voting is just one miniature slice of the pie to who that individual person is. And you're going to say, oh, I don't like that slice, and just pretend they don't exist or matter. Come on, right? We have to be empathetic. We have to listen, and we have to just understand. It doesn't necessarily mean we need a really, really strong relationship with that person forever. Maybe not. But I would hope we would just be able to sort of meet each other where we're at, and just walk away with learning. And that's what I would say is the potential benefit there, is that you'll learn a lot. You'll be able to understand their point of view and the shoes they're walking in, and be able to bridge a more healthy gap moving forward.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I think for as men, I think our tendency is just to fix things, right? So if Cassie comes to me with a problem, I'm like, I'm going to fix it for you, right? And so I have that immediate tendency because I'm going to repair it and make everything better. But sometimes Cassie just wants me to kind of sit with it, and to understand where she's coming from and how that feels. But that's an icky feeling, right? We're talking about something that doesn't make me feel comfortable, and I don't like sitting in that space, right? I have an aversion to that. I just want to fix it and then be on to fun things, right? So, I think especially for men, I think that is a difficult thing to do sometimes. So I think about these things from an empathy, standpoint. Yeah. So, Cassie, are there some things that people can do right now in terms of their mental health? I'm thinking about maybe taking action locally, perhaps channeling all of this extra energy that we have into community service, for example, or maybe writing letters to local politicians or getting active somehow in a local way. What are some things that we can do right now to do with all of this extra energy that we have?
Well, to fix it, as we should say. No, I think that, like you said, putting your energy into change that you can, put your finger on, and that we may not be able to change what happens after the elections. That someone's going to be upset and someone's going to be happy, and I think there'll be a lot of figuring out how you do feel about that, and we may not know until that happens, but. Can we change it individually? Like you said, one small portion? No. But what we can do is, enough of the little change makes a big change. I think that, there's petitions on like change.org. Like you can go on to some of these sites and find what it is that you are passionate about. So one of the things that we did this season is I went to Costco, and I should never be left there unattended with a credit card, not safe. But I bought a bunch of snacks and food and drinks and non-perishables, and I put together little bags so that when we pass some homeless people or people that seem a little bit down on their luck, instead of my children seeing me like drive by or hearing, well, they made that life decision. I do something positive, and I have these little bags in my car so that instead I'm handing them out, and my kids know it. They're like, don't move the food bag, mom's gonna need it. And so on days like the election day where tensions may be high, people are just kind of like waiting for what's going to happen. Those are the days where I know if I go out and I pass out 6 more of those bags, it makes me feel like I made a change and a difference in a positive way that will impact somebody else's day. And I had control over that. I think for my kids also, we did little rocks during quarantine that said like, be happy or love. And we painted them like Easter eggs, since the Easter Bunny had COVID and couldn't come this year. We're not sure if Santa's going to make it either. But either way, we take these little rocks and we would put them around the neighborhood or in the pathway, or have the kids chalk on the sidewalks. And those little things change someone's day. They do. I think back to a couple days ago, I was in Starbucks line, and the person in front of me bought my Starbucks. And I tend to do that often, and I love it. I just think it's really, really cool that that someone is pushing on an idea of kindness. And those are the things that you can control, is your attitude. And if something matters to you, then research it. Send in letters to your senators. I mean, they work for us. We forget that, so many times it's all about, it seems like, okay, what are they even there for? That's what they're there for. And if we as a people can't remind the ones that we've elected to these positions to take care of our communities and our country, then what are they there for? So I mean, I could send my kids in at this point sometimes, and I think they'd get things done faster. So we have a voice. We just have to use it, and use it effectively, and use our energy towards positive things that matter to us.
That's really good advice. And Cassie, I had another question for you too, because recently I watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix, which absolutely scared me completely. So I don't know if you want to like leave Facebook, maybe you want to watch that because that will push you out the door.
It's on my to-do list.
So, I mean, so what part does the social media play in all of this that we've been talking about, right? And do you think at the end of the election cycle will bring some relief for people?
Oh gosh, I sure hope so. One can hope. I think social media as a whole on an everyday, outside of an election year or COVID or pandemics, is stressful for most people. I think that it can be a really great positive tool when you want to connect to somebody. I know that my mom loves seeing pictures of dogs and babies and all the happy things that are out there. And that's her kind of connection tool. And so I think there are positive benefits to what social media was created for. In fact, before The Social Dilemma, I did listen to a podcast on how I built this. And it was interesting. One of the gentlemen at the founding of Instagram said it was created just for snapshots of moments in time, like food, like nature. It was almost like the photography version of what Facebook was supposed to be, and not the status updates. And when he got interviewed again, and I know during Social Dilemma he says the same thing, his kids don't have it. Like these big tech guys, their families don't have social media like we do. Like we allow for our kids to have the free reign, because they know how damaging it can be on your self-esteem, on your level of competition, versus confidence. I mean, these are things we deal with every single day. And there wouldn't be, these big tech CEOs would not be in the hot water that they are if we were able to trust every single thing that was put out there in front of us. So I think we have to be able to discern what is, like political bias, what's political polarization versus, what's a business, like, is this a business tool? And or is this a connection tool? Because you can't be both. You can't have a bias to reporting certain things and then not allowing other people to promote their ideas if you are specifically just a communication tool. And I think the news has lost its meaning, because if you look up the definition of news, it says information. Now, back in the day when Peter Jennings was coming on my television when I was little, I remember it was, today there was a house fire. Today, the weather is, and we were allowed to think, I wonder why there was a house fire. I wonder why the weather is the way that it was. Someone wasn't telling me their opinion. And our news has turned into almost like a form of The View in some ways. Like all of these people they come in and have their opinions, and that's great for certain shows. But if I just want to get the news, the facts, what happened today, I don't know where we get that anymore, Mike. I really don't. I feel like it's become very, very, as a journalism major, I'm sickened to think that the responsibility as journalists is to report on the information that they see, hear, feel to all of us. And I think we've lost our trust in all of it. I don't even know where they get their integrity back, because it's very sad and kind of disgusting to me, to be honest with you. There's not another word I can think about it other than when there are so many things that you could be just giving people the opportunity to make the decisions and think for themselves, which is what we need to do as a community and as a world, is be able to think for ourselves, have conversations that are tough, but be armed with ideas and facts that were maybe given to us from sources that we trust. So I don't know I don't know. I don't know if you guys have someone that you trust that's a better source to go to. But I feel like we fall into a couple of categories. Like someone will watch mainstream media, someone will watch, something that's less mainstream. And then you become, again, divisive on where you get your news from. And we're all getting different news. So then at the end of the day, you may be right, I may be right, or we may both be wrong. And no one's there to police it until it's to their benefit. So that was a little bit of a rant, but I will say I have hope that at some point the integrity of journalists will turn itself around, because it was something that I studied, and I wanted to be Barbara Walters, and now I couldn't get far enough away from it. It just feels kind of ick. So
Yeah. What do you think about that, Greg?
It's a key issue, and it's an issue that I didn't know was prevalent until 2020, to be honest. And maybe that's me being naive, but I didn't know it was an issue until this year. That, can I trust this news source or not? I thought, mainstream was kind of the route, right? The Fox, the CNN, whatever it is, the CNN, the NBC, like, I thought that is the way, but not necessarily. And so I am not sure if there's this crystal ball news source per se. And I think it's just kind of swallowing that pill and maybe coming to terms with maybe there is no perfect situation, and just trying to, I think it's important to diversify our portfolio so we're not narrowing in on only one itty bitty pigeonhole to sort of skew our mentalities. And then from filtering all that and digesting all that widespread information, again, like you said, Cassie, then thinking on our own, okay, how does this make sense? Does this make sense? Is this forward moving for my family and my life and society around me? Or does this not make logical sense? Not leading with emotion, but leading with logic, and understanding that, man, maybe there is not 100% probability. Maybe it's in the 90s. Maybe it's in the 80s. There's no number we can guarantee.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mike's kids are going to figure it out when they do their fact checking and all their. So we'll wait for those.
We'll wait for that report to come out. But I tell you what, I'm advising not only my kids, but also the college students that I work with, just to put down their devices and get to know each other again, because I really feel like social media is just really kind of eating away at our fabric. And I think if we don't do something about it and take control of it, then unfortunately, I don't want to know what that looks like. I think we have to spend more time with our brothers and sisters in our fraternities and sororities. I think we have to spend more time getting to know our neighbors and having real conversations. Put down those devices, focus on the brotherhood, focus on the sisterhood, and let that guide you. Because what I see now is, a lot of students just being really, spending inordinate amounts of times on social media, whether it be a TikTok rabbit hole that they go down for 2 hours. Now they're losing sleep. They're comparing themselves to their best friends on Instagram that are, in some faraway, beach, living their best life with a filter on. It's not healthy. It's not healthy. So put down those devices and get to know your brothers and sisters. You'll thank me for it later.
Absolutely. It's also not realistic all the time or truthful, so completely agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, this has been a fantastic conversation. So thank you so much, both to Cassie and Greg, for spending some time with us. Of course, if you want to connect with them, you can find them on the Greek University website. So that's greekuniversity.org. You can put /Cassie or /Greg, and you can find out more about their bios and their programs. They'd love to work with your students on your college campus. So obviously right now we're doing that virtually. We're having all kinds of programs with up to 1,000 students. We just had 1,000 students in a program on Saturday at one institution, which was just phenomenal. So let us know how we can help. And thank you so much, Greg and Cassie, for your time today. I think this was definitely helpful and very timely considering what we're going through.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike and Cassie. Great to connect with you guys.
Great.
Absolutely. You boys as well. Thank you
Thanks
so much.
again. Have a good night.
You guys have a nice one. Take care.